Be honest, why do some people with almost no income still end up richer than people who earn 5 times more? Why does life feel so unfairly tilted toward a tiny group who start with nothing, yet somehow rise above everyone who had a head start? It doesn't make sense, right? On paper, they shouldn't win. They shouldn't succeed.
They shouldn't build wealth. And yet, quietly, slowly, they do. So what's happening here? What invisible force allows someone with a low salary, no financial background, no wealthy family, and sometimes no formal education to become richer than the people who once looked down on them? Here's the truth almost nobody talks about. They don't rise because of money.
They rise because of psychology. Most people think wealth starts with income. But income is only fuel. The engine is the mind. And the shocking truth?
People born rich, not because they had it easy, but because they had no choice but to think differently. Let's go deeper. When someone grows up with very little, they experience a kind of mental pressure most people never know. Parents fighting over rent, choosing which bill to pay late, learning early that we can't afford it is normal, feeling guilt for wanting things.
Watching dreams shrink because money decides everything. These moments don't just create emotion, they create identity. Most people break under that identity, but a rare few, a very rare few, transform because of it. They become sharper, more aware, more hungry, more resilient than anyone realizes. Not because they wanted to be strong, but because they had to become strong. And that leads to something powerful.
Moment where they ask themselves, if I don't change something, will anything in my life ever change? This is the psychological turning point. The split between the person they were forced to be and the person they decide to become. And after that moment, everything shifts. They stop waiting.
Stop blaming. Stop seeking permission. Stop following the beliefs around them. Instead, they begin rewriting their internal script. Society programs them to think, people like us never become rich. Money is too hard. Success is luck. Dream big, be realistic. But low-income millionaires do something extraordinary. Stop blaming. Stop seeking permission. Stop following the beliefs around them. Instead, they begin rewriting their internal script. Society programs them to think, people like us never become rich. Money is too hard. Success is luck. Dream big, be realistic. But low-income millionaires do something extraordinary.
And install new ones. Quietly, privately, relentlessly. They begin to question everything. They begin to see opportunities others overlook. They begin to build habits that compound over years. They begin to outgrow their environment mentally, long before they outgrow it financially. And here's the psychological twist.
Your brain becomes capable of taking risks that other people fear. This is why people from low-income backgrounds often start small businesses, save aggressively, invest early, try new paths, chase freedom over comfort, learn constantly, break generational patterns.
Because the world didn't hand them safety, so they learned to build it. They don't rise because they're lucky. They rise because they shift identity. And identity is the root of wealth. In the next section, we'll break down the exact psychological patterns that turn low-income individuals into future millionaires. Patterns anyone can learn, including you. Here's the part nobody expects. When most people think of someone becoming rich, they imagine luck, opportunity, connections, or talent. But in reality, the future rich who start from low-income backgrounds share 5 psychological patterns that quietly set them apart long before money ever arrives. These aren't secrets you'll learn in school. They aren't tips from influencers. They are survival-based mental rewiring, born in silence, in pressure, in the moments most people never see. Let's break them down one by one.
Most people make financial decisions based on emotion. I'm tired. I deserve this. Everyone else has it. I should too. I'll save later. I'll deal with money problems next month. But people who rise from low-income backgrounds learn something earlier than most. Emotion doesn't pay bills. Strategy does. They may feel the same fear, anger, exhaustion, jealousy, or pressure as others, but they don't let those emotions decide their behavior. They feel the hurt, they feel the frustration, but they still choose what moves them forward. That's the beginning of wealth psychology. Because once you stop reacting and start calculating, your entire financial destiny shifts.
People with comfortable lives often assume one day everything will work out. But those who grow up with less, they don't have the luxury of fantasy. They see reality early. Nothing changes unless you change. Money won't magically appear. Entitlement is a trap. Life doesn't reward effort, it rewards direction. Nobody is coming to save them. This awareness becomes their superpower.
While others are waiting, hoping, dreaming, or blaming, they are adapting, observing, learning how the world actually works. Because reality, not positivity, is what prepares someone to rise.
Knowing it. Rich people don't get rich from one decision. They get rich from thousands of tiny, invisible decisions. Decisions that compound over time. Choosing saving over spending. Choosing learning over comfort. Choosing discipline over impulse. Choosing long-term gain over short-term pleasure. Most people can't do this.
They want the dopamine now. But people who grew up with less learn something powerful. Waiting is normal. They waited for everything growing up. Waited for clothes to be passed down, waited for sales, waited for delayed bills, waited for opportunities, waited for life to get easier.
Most people are embarrassed to start small. They avoid new beginnings because it makes them feel less. But people from low-income backgrounds, they're not scared of small beginnings because their entire life was a small beginning. They don't care if
Their business starts tiny. Their first investments are $10. Their learning is slow. Their progress is humble. Nobody notices their efforts. What they fear is stagnation, staying stuck, staying powerless, staying in the same cycle. That fear becomes fuel.
It makes them take risks others avoid, start projects others laugh at, and keep going long after others quit.
everyone has pain, but not everyone uses it the same way. Some people use pain as an excuse. I'm depressed. I had a hard life. Things are unfair. It's not my fault. But low-income future millionaires convert pain into direction. They look at what hurt them and quietly promise themselves, my future will not look like my past.
That shift, that one internal vow, creates unstoppable momentum. Pain becomes energy. Pressure becomes motivation. Struggle becomes strategy. Fear becomes focus. They don't run from pain, they use it. And that is the psychology of transformation.
People don't rise from low income to wealth because they are lucky or born different or gifted. They rise because their psychology shifts in a way most people never experience. They build discipline, awareness, emotional control, delayed reward skills, adaptability, inner fire, identity strength. Not in comfort,
but in pressure. Pressure creates the foundations of wealth, long before the money arrives. In the next section, we'll break down how these psychological patterns turn into real financial results.
from habits to mindset to behavior to destiny.
Most people think wealth begins with money. But the truth is strange. Wealth begins in the mind, long before it appears in the bank. Everything starts with patterns, because psychology becomes behavior, behavior becomes habits, and habits become destiny. In this section, we focus on how mental shifts quietly create real-life financial advantages, even for someone with low income and unplanned debts.
Thinking. Average people focus on what they don't have: time, money, opportunities, support. Future rich people focus on what they can control: skills, behaviors, curiosity, consistency. This single difference creates wealth over time. What you repeatedly pay attention to becomes your life direction. Poor attention, poor habits. Rich attention, rich habits. It's not magic, it's psychology.
Most people underestimate small actions. They think if something doesn't change their life instantly, it's useless. But future wealthy individuals understand something deeper. Tiny habits done daily build unstoppable momentum. Examples? Reading 15 minutes a day, saving $1 instead of $0, learning one new skill each week, consuming educational content instead of noise,
Tracking expenses even when income is small. These don't look powerful in the moment, but in 6 months, 1 year, 3 years, they create a completely different person. And different people attract different results.
Here's a psychological truth most people ignore. You cannot earn above the identity you hold. If someone deep down sees themselves as unlucky, bad with money, not meant for success, or average, then the brain will sabotage every chance to grow. Future rich individuals rewrite their identity early.
I'm capable. I'm learning. I'm improving. I'm not staying where I started. And once identity shifts, choices shift, habits shift, opportunities appear. People treat you differently. Life responds differently. Identity is the foundation of all wealth.
most people escape reality through TV, scrolling, gossip, distraction, comparison, noise. But low-income future success people slowly replace entertainment with tools. Courses instead of random videos, podcasts instead of drama, reading instead of scrolling, planning instead of complaining. They don't quit entertainment completely. They just don't drown in it. They start using their free time like a weapon. And over months, the difference becomes enormous.
Future rich people don't always cut people off dramatically. Instead, something more subtle happens. Their inner world grows faster than their environment. They stop sharing their dreams with negative people. They stop expecting support from the wrong places. They stop giving energy to those who drain it.
Slowly, quietly, they create mental distance. Not out of hate, but out of necessity. And with that distance comes clarity. With clarity comes better decisions. With better decisions comes progress. The circle doesn't control them anymore. At this point, one truth becomes clear. Wealth doesn't start with more money. It starts with fewer excuses. It starts with awareness, with discipline, with identity, with micro actions that compound into macro results. And that's why people with low income, people who struggle, people who feel behind
Often become the most powerful wealth builders later in life. Not because they had less, but because they learned more. In Section 4, we break down exactly how these mental shifts translate into financial breakthroughs, from saving to investing to income growth, step by psychological step.
Have you ever wondered why some people become wealthy while others, just as smart and just as hardworking, stay exactly where they are? The answer isn't luck, and it's not the economy, and it's definitely not intelligence. It's psychology.
There's a moment in every wealthy person's life where something invisible shifts, something internal, quiet, and almost impossible to notice from the outside. It's not a financial event, it's a mental one, a deep, private decision that sounds like, I'm done living small.
But this shift doesn't happen in a dramatic way. No, it begins in the silent moments most people ignore, like the moment someone realizes they're tired of surviving instead of living, or the moment they catch themselves thinking, there has to be more than this, or the moment they look around and see that everyone they know is stuck in the exact same loop and they refuse to die in that loop.
And this refusal, this internal rebellion, is what separates people who stay average from people who rise. Because wealthy minds don't wait for permission. They don't wait for motivation. They don't wait for the right time. They build the right time. Most people think rich minds are obsessed with money. They're not. They're obsessed with possibility.
They see what could be, not just what is. While others complain about circumstances, they study them. While others freeze in fear, they act through fear. While others look for comfort, they look for leverage. But here's the part nobody tells you. Wealth begins in the invisible things, in daily thoughts, tiny habits, micro decisions so small you wouldn't even notice them. They see what could be, not just what is. While others complain about circumstances, they study them. While others freeze in fear, they act through fear. While others look for comfort, they look for leverage. But here's the part nobody tells you. Wealth begins in the invisible things, in daily thoughts, tiny habits, micro decisions so small you wouldn't even notice them.
Wealth begins when someone stops saying, I can't afford this, and starts saying, how can I afford this? It begins when someone stops saying, I don't know how, and starts saying, I'll figure it out. It begins when someone stops waiting for opportunities and starts building them. And maybe the hardest truth of all,
Wealthy people don't run from discomfort. They run toward it because they know discomfort is the doorway. Comfort is the cage. When an average person feels overwhelmed, they shut down. When a wealthy mind feels overwhelmed, they lean in. When an average person feels afraid, they avoid. When a wealthy mind feels afraid, they investigate. Why am I afraid? What does this fear teach me? What is the opportunity hiding behind it? This is why wealth is a mindset long before it becomes a bank balance. Money doesn't create a wealthy mind.
A wealthy mind creates money. And somewhere deep inside you, you already feel that spark. The part of you that doesn't want a normal life. The part that knows you're meant for more. The part that refuses to settle for the life your past prepared you for. That part of you is real. That part is the beginning of everything.
Because the moment you stop thinking like the person you are and start thinking like the person you want to become, your entire life shifts. Not slowly, not subtly, but powerfully. This is the psychology that transforms a limited life into a limitless one. Not magic, not luck, just a mind that finally chooses to grow beyond what it was taught to believe.
and the truth is, most people will never activate this part of themselves. But you're listening to this for a reason. Something inside you is waking up.
And now we arrive at the truth most people never want to face. Wealth doesn't start when money enters your life. Wealth starts when excuses leave it. You can work hard your entire life. You can be kind, honest, talented, disciplined, and still stay broke if your mind keeps repeating the same patterns that broke people follow.
Because the world doesn't pay you for effort. It pays you for thinking differently. Everyone wants freedom, but only a few people want the responsibility that comes with creating it. Everyone wants success, but only a few want to outgrow their comfort long enough to reach it.
Everyone wants wealth, but only a few want to become the kind of person who can hold wealth. That's the real difference. Rich minds don't rise because they're lucky. They rise because they refuse to shrink. They refuse to live inside a story someone else wrote for them. They refuse to stay trapped in the identity they were given as a child. They refuse to let fear become the loudest voice in their life. Because when you upgrade your mind,
Your life has no choice but to follow. And maybe this is the part you need to hear. You are one decision away from a completely different future. Not someday, not when the time is right, right now. A single shift in perspective, a single risk taken, a single moment of refusing to stay average can rewire the entire direction of your life. Money follows courage.
Success follows clarity. And wealth follows the mind that finally decides, I am done living small. So here's the question that decides everything from this moment forward. If your future self, the wealthy, powerful, confident version of you,
Could speak to you right now, what do you think they'd say? That question alone divides people who stay the same from people who make history. Now tell me, what did your future self just whisper to you? Drop your answer in the comments. Your next chapter starts right there.